Guys, I'm Captain Mike and welcome back to the Inside Scoop, your weekly 30-minute Florida Keys offshore fishing report with so much more, right? We talk about so many cool topics, all of the little details that are designed to make you a more successful angler. Okay, that's the idea. We want to keep you hooked up. Okay, the more fish you catch, the more fun you have out on the water and the more that you get into it, right? So it's all of those little details that are just going to make you more successful out there. Look, guys, a lot to talk about here. Friday, August 1st already. I mean, wow. Okay, wow, it's already August. Certainly hot, my God. I mean, weather-wise, it is blistering. I don't remember any year where already at the end of July, early August, it's 110 degrees every day, my God. So certainly that has an effect on the fisheries, has an effect on the fishermen. Okay, we're just getting over mini season here in the Keys. How crazy was that? Millions of boats killing millions of lobsters. That's basically what that comes down to. And the amount of people and the traffic out on the water has just been crazy. But that's now past us and we can focus more on the fishing, so to speak. Look, with this heat, and very little wind because this pattern's going to continue. We've had 5 to 10 knots every day for a while, and it looks like that's going to continue well into the upcoming week. All right. On the reef, inshore, 5 to 10. Offshore, if you're going to run off looking for dolphin, if you're going to go sword fishing, expect maybe 5 knots more, so maybe 10 to 15. East, southeast. Chance of showers here and there. I guarantee they're going to pop up, probably going to increase a little bit as the weekend comes to a close and next week progresses. Keep an eye on those storms that pop up. Typical pattern for this time of the year. Okay, but certainly hot, stay well hydrated, get out early if you can. Great time of the year to fish at night also. Snappers on the reef will bite at night this time of the year, so great shot to do that. Look, a lot to talk about. Over the last few weeks, I've pounded Mangrove Snapper into your head, and I've said, hey, now's the time. Get out there, do it. But here it is, and that fishery is rapidly coming to a close. The charter boat fleet has just been beaten up on those snappers all up and down the island chain. And now it's come to a point where even if, conditions are good and you've got moving water, doesn't mean you're going to find cooperative fish, okay? So just keep that in mind. The challenges on the reef are increasing, but certainly if you put in the time, you'll be rewarded. Look, there's guys down here that are fishing every day, multiple times a week. They've got their finger on the pulse. They know what's hot and what's not. You just showed up and want to get out there and fish one day and think you're going to hit the jackpot. It's not going to happen, Jack. You've got to get out there, put in the time, put in the effort, all right? But I promise you, if you do that, you'll definitely be rewarded, okay? But it's going to take some time to get dialed in. Make sure that chum is flowing. Make sure you're fishing the freshest baits. You're as stealthy as possible, okay? Don't overdo it with the amount of people fishing at any given time. Look for those ideal conditions, and if it doesn't come together, be prepared to move. Make sure your boat's in the proper position. This is a game of, of course, inches. When you're anchored on those reefs, you've got to make sure that you're ahead of the structure that you want to fish. And if you're lucky, you'll have wind and current in the same direction that'll pull your baits over the edge of those, the exposed rock, the coral, and all of that life. The reef is such a magical place. Every bait that you drop down, you never know what's going to eat that bait. Okay, of course, the mangrove snappers are the prize, or I should say the primary target. I shouldn't say the prize. Every snapper on the reef is a prize, but a red grouper could eat your bait at any time. A mutton snapper could eat your bait at any time. Of course, if you want to focus more on the yellowtail snapper, I would suggest moving a little bit deeper. Don't look in that 30 to 40 foot, 50 foot range where you would focus for the mangroves. I want you to push out to 70, 90, 110 foot off the edge of that reef, right on the edge of that drop off. That's where you're going to find those bigger yellowtail. Okay, fresh bait in that fishery is also really, really important, and few things beat fresh pilchards. Okay, those small little pilchards, man, those yellowtails love those. If you can get live bait, whew, you're certainly stacking the odds in your favor, right? If you can get out there and net some live bait. Speaking of which, there's been a ton of bait around. A ton of, white bait, pilchards, sardines, thread fins, stuff like that. A lot of bait in a lot of places where we haven't seen bait in these numbers before. So that's a good sign as well, especially here in the Middle Keys. The pinfish, on the other hand, far and few between. This time of the year, if you're looking for the pinfish, which is still such a great bait, it's absolutely going to require you to fish further up in the Gulf. Get away from the Atlantic side here. Right now, the snappers are so thick, the water's so warm. There's just not a lot of pinfish on our grass beds, okay? They load up with juvenile mangroves and yellowtails. I had hogfish and puffers, all sorts of stuff, crabs, stone crabs, you know, in the traps, and that prevents and you know, turns off whatever pinfish are in that area. They're not going in that trap, and there's just not a lot there right now. So if you're, you know, really focused on loading up on the pins, definitely look further up in the Gulf, okay, on those grass beds up there. The wrecks, it's a good time to fish the wrecks, man. There's muttons on the wrecks. There's some porgies and margates mixed in. Of course, amberjack if you're looking for something to beat you up for a while. The big pinfish, or I'm sorry, the big pilchards, man, that's just a deadly bait for the muttons right now. A live ballyhoo is a great bait, and there's been a lot of ballyhoo around too. The guys that have been reef fishing, a lot of ballyhoo in the chum slicks. So if you can get your hands on fresh ballyhoo, boy, let me tell you something. There are few deadlier baits across the Florida Keys than a live ballyhoo. You drop that to the bottom, I promise you something. I promise you, you drop a live ballyhoo to the bottom, on or around any wreck in 150 to 250 feet of water, in that range, up and down the island chain, something is eating it. Okay, it's just a matter of time before you get bit. Can't promise you what it's going to be. The variety is, you know, could be anything, but something's going to eat it. If you're really looking for those muttons, the long leaders are really important, okay? It's about stealth, especially this time of the year. You don't have a lot of wind, right? There's a lot of days, there's little current, and I'll tell you, a lot of pressure. And when all of that comes together, high temperatures, incredibly bright sky, you know, bright sunshine, all of that has an effect on how these muttons feed and how these muttons eat. So you've got to be as sneaky as you can possibly be. This is no place to drop in there with a high-low rig tied on 130-pound line and think you're going to get bit. That's not what's going to happen. Long leaders, 40-pound diamond presentation fluorocarbon is a perfect fit. You can bump it up to 50 if you'd like, or you can scale down to 30 to try and give you that little bit of an edge, but I found 40 to be the sweet spot. It's got to be long, 30, 40, sometimes even a 50-foot leader. Okay, nice fresh bait on there. May it be a ballyhoo, half a goggle eye is a great bait. Live pinfish, if you can get a nice big one, drop them down there as well. Okay, some guys have some secret baits. A beautiful whole squid. Man, snappers love squid. So don't discount that as a great bottom bait when you're out there looking for the muttons. Has a lot of odor as well. And keep that bait still. Anchor up current of the spot that you want to fish. Drop those baits to the bottom and just wait for that bite. I like to drift around the wrecks. Okay, I feel like I've got a better shot at not only the muttons, but some of the other species that might be prowling the same structures. Okay, but a grid pattern, you know, have a clear understanding as to where that structure is below the boat. Keep one eye glued to the machine. I fish a Furuno TZT XL network, and I'm telling you what, no matter what I'm doing over the side, I'm constantly looking at my MFDs. Situational awareness is vital in all of our fisheries, okay, especially this time of the year where you have a lot of boat traffic. The weather's really, really, you know, nice and still, super, super hot. So any advantage that you can get out on the water is going to really play a big role throughout the summertime here. Now, further off, dolphin fishing remains strong. I mean, look, we just can't ignore that. I mean, it's been really a very, very strong dolphin season and continues to be. We were out just a couple of days ago, had a great group, members of the Sea Hunter Boats family, and just looking for action, you know, not really looking for or hoping for a big bull and cow. We were just looking for numbers, and we had plenty of fish, and we're on our way in by 11 a.m. Okay, it was an early bite, and that's what I recommend. Get out there as early as you can, because I'll tell you what, you're not the only guy looking for these fish, and the more boats that start finding that and fishing that edge or that weed line or that pack of birds, they're going to put those fish down. It's going to happen. I promise you, they're going to put the fish down. So if you can get out there as early as you can, I would highly recommend it, okay? If you can run offshore, you know, load it up in live pilchards, of course that's going to be an advantage, no question. You know, every time you hook a fish on the troll, or you can run and gun and you're throwing these live pilchards, any dolphin within a country mile is going to be behind your boat in a matter of seconds. So live bait is a huge advantage when you're dolphin fishing, but it's not the only way, and it's not necessary. You know, especially if you're not looking to rack up dozens and dozens of fish. I mean, how many dolphin do you really need? Seems the majority of these fish right now are in the 22 to 26 inch range, schoolies. You know, there might be a couple gaffers here and there that are mixed in as well. Certainly a shot at bigger fish, you know, at any time. But the majority are going to be the smaller fish, but it's a numbers game. I mean, think about it. Only a small percentage of dolphin make it to be gaffer size, and even a smaller percentage of that make it to slammer size. So, you know, the numbers are very, very low. You know, it's probably 1%, right? So 1 out of every 100 is going to be above 30 inches. It's probably a fair number, okay? So just keep that in mind. And look, when you're offshore looking for these fish, I can't stress enough, like, you know, when we head off, right now we're starting to really focus our efforts, and anywhere from around 630, 650 feet, and that range is where we start to see the ocean come to life. A lot more birds, bait, you know, a lot more life. That's where I'm going to start to fish. I'm going to look for any weed lines, but I'm really focused on working birds this time of the year because there's so much grass out there. I mean, there's a lot of grass, I got to be honest with you. There's a lot of scattered weed, not really giant patches and super well-formed lines, but a lot of scattered stuff with some of the patches, you know, boat size, some even a little bit bigger. But most of it is just smaller patches everywhere. And look, you can fish that stuff. You can. We're really effective at fishing that. But you've got to do it smart, you know, you really do, you know, and this kind of brings me to something that I want to talk a lot about here today. You know, we troll for those schoolies, right? We're looking for the fish. We're trolling. We've got aboard our Mercury-powered Sea Hunter 41. We've got a pair of Taco Grand Slam mounts with the 20-foot carbon fiber telescopic poles. It's the same setup we've been fishing for years. You can rig it with up to 3 release clips. We don't, we've got 1. We keep it very, very simple. I'm fishing 1 long rigger, short rigger. 1 bait out of each outrigger. Yes, I can rig them with 3 and fish a lot more lines, and, you know, combined, that would be 4 more additional lines. You're asking for trouble. There's too much grass. You can't do it. You're not dragging baits in open water. That's not what this is. Think about it for a moment. You know, we fish right now 7 lines. We're fishing when we're trolling, 1 off each rigger, 2 long flats, 2 on the corners, and a shotgun. It's a real manageable spread. Everything is dialed in. Everything is where it needs to be, certain lures in certain positions, and it's a system. And it's the same over and over. You catch a fish here, that bait goes right back there. You get one over here, that bait goes right back there after getting those fish to the boat. It's that simple, okay? Keep it clean, keep it efficient. We start adding 2 more here and 2 more here, you're asking for trouble. And like I said, there's just so much grass. Sorry about that. So keep it efficient. Because remember, the more time that the baits are in the water fishing, the more fish you're catching. That's what it boils down to. If you're spending all day clearing grass and clearing weed and clearing tangles, you're not fishing. You're reducing your efforts. You're thinking you're increasing your efforts by having so many lines and so much going on, maybe teasers, dredges, I don't know, okay? But you're not going to be able to do it. I promise you, you can't do it. Okay, it's just not going to work out. A lot of guys say to me, hey, when you're trolling for dolphin, do you also drag a deep diving plug? It's a great concept, and absolutely, if I can and that water's clear, that baby's going down. But that's been the rarity, okay, because as soon as you put it in the water, it's fouled up, and now you're spending all of this time clearing that and not really focusing on what you can. So point is, keep it simple. Look at the big picture, okay, and fish efficiently and effectively. Speaking of the outriggers, you know, we obviously have these outrigger release clips. You know, here's a standard outrigger release clip. And if you're new to this, maybe, Release clip goes out on a lanyard, goes out to the end of the outrigger. Your line from your rod tip is going up to this clip and then out to the water. Very simple concept, right? Fish grabs the bait, the clip pops open, the line comes down, you're now fighting the fish right off the rod tip. That's how it works, simple. And these are adjustable. There's a little tension knob up on top. The more that I tighten that, the more resistance or the more tension it creates or is required to pop that open. Obviously, that's adjustable for a reason because it's not set it and forget it. Every scenario is going to require you to make sure that that clip is adjusted properly. If I'm fishing a bigger lure, bigger bait, rougher conditions, you know, targeting bigger fish on heavier tackle, that's going to need to be tighter. On the other hand, if I'm fishing for schoolies with lighter baits, lighter gear, that's going to need to be looser, okay? Otherwise, you hook a dolphin and you got them on, but it's not popping out of the clip. And if it's too loose, you know, conversely, if it's too loose, you're just constantly popping it out of the clip and all you're doing is wasting time. So you've got to find that sweet spot. So remember, it's not just set it, forget it. That's your typical release clip. I don't like these at all because there's a sharp edge right there. When that pops open and your line pops right out of there, and I understand that's all happening in a split second, but I promise you, your monofilament could get hit with that tip of that little spike and it damages the line. It happens. And you may lose that fish, zing pow, right there, or you may not see the damage that caused for a couple more trips and then it costs you a fish. So don't let that happen. A lot of guys will use a rubber band, okay, from their main running line right to the release clip. This way, there's no risk whatsoever of that damaging your actual running line. I like these sort of clips, these like knockouts, okay, where they have a tension knob on the top and on the bottom. That's number one. So that gives you the ability to really dial in how much tension you want on that clip before it opens. This incorporates a roller, very much like a roller guide on a trolling outfit, right? So it has a roller, so that reduces friction on the line. Plus, when it opens up, it's very precise. Everything is very round. The tolerances are very tight. There's very little chance of your line getting damaged when that pops open on that type of release clip versus this type of release clip. So step it up to a better clip. Even with these, when we can, I would use a rubber band and recommend that you do, okay? This way you just absolutely eliminate the risk of all, you know, of that damaging your line because that could really cost you a fish. Now look, another thing I want to remind you, when we're trolling for these dolphin, you know, no bait, we're just fishing small little lures, a little Zacatec extra smalls and a variety of other baits in that size range. And what I'm trying to do is I'm really scouting, right? I'm fishing a clean spread. I'm working those birds. I'm starting to see schools. I'm constantly glassing. I've got stabilized binoculars on board. And even with the Furuno in bird mode, even with, you know, everything we're seeing around us still, I'm constantly looking around, okay? And you're gonna see stuff that you would have otherwise missed. And we're working those birds, packs of birds. And of course, trolling around the outskirts of them. And it's always a good idea, I'm telling you, always have a bucket of cut chunks ready to go, because when you hook one on the troll, you bring that fish to the boat. If you throw a handful of chunks, oftentimes additional fish will show up right there. And that's why it's so important that you never head offshore without some spinning outfits rigged and ready to go. This is how you turn one dolphin into 5 dolphin, because you're ready. Typical spinner, Chaos SP 15 to 30 pound class outfit. You've seen us talk about this and use this rod so many times, okay? It's certainly one of the most versatile rods that we own. 8,000, 10,000 size spinning reel is perfect, loaded with 20-pound diamond braid. So I've got tremendous amount of line capacity because that 20-pound diamond braid is so small. The diameter of that's like practically a hair. So I've got a ton of line capacity on that reel, which is important when you throw a bait or pitch a bait to a big bull. Just happened to us a couple weeks ago, fighting a 45, 50-pound bull on a spinner One thing I never had to worry about was line capacity. We always had plenty on the reel no matter what the scenario was in that fight. So in turn, really important, but I always put a top shot above it. Okay, top shot of 20-pound monofilament, a lot of stretch, easy to work with, stealthy. Okay, and then of course your leader at the end, depending on 30-pound fluorocarbon, 40, maybe even 50, depending on the size dolphin that you're intending on pitching a bait to. But the point I'm making is having it rigged and handy and ready, you know, a set of 2, 4, 6. Sometimes we'll even carry 8 spinners rigged and ready to go on an offshore dolphin run. You just never know what could happen. And you want to be able to take advantage of every one of those bites, okay? So preparation is going to be really important this time of the year. Okay, especially when we have these days with no wind and a lot of pressure out there. A lot of that's going to change. You know, we're approaching the off season, right? There's a brief off season here in the Keys. And I'm going to tell you, it's really certainly September, October. Okay, but I feel like it starts in August here and it just kind of fades, like everything fades as, of course, hurricane season approaches. Kids are back to school. You know, a lot of the local businesses are closed, you know, for really the entire month, even more sometimes. So, you know, that time of the year is approaching. But that doesn't mean that the fish are slacking off. Certainly, there's a lot of great opportunities. I want to reiterate that way offshore, sword fishing remains excellent. Okay, right now we've got great conditions to get out there and swordfish. The deep dropping, of course, is closed. And, you know, there's one thing I want to mention. I've come across it a couple times recently, and it really bothers me. Look, we don't make the laws, but we've got to follow them, right? Here in the South Atlantic, deep dropping for tile fish and groupers is closed. Yet you've got guys who are visiting the Keys who I think just don't give a shit, or I don't know what it is, but here they are deep dropping for tile fish and grouper. What are you doing? You can't do that, all right? You're breaking the law. And I don't want to be a rat, but it kind of pisses me off. If I've got to follow the law, so do you. And again, I'm not saying every law is fair, but it is what it is. And that's one reason, you know, I brought up to you recently where I'm getting involved with NOAA and fisheries regulations and really taking a bigger stance at being the voice for the recreational angling community. I want to learn more about quotas, how they're met, regulations, how they're made, you know, closed seasons, open seasons, what's fair, what's not. Why is there such a big difference between a lot of the fisheries right here in this ocean versus this ocean when they connect and they butt up against each other? There's got to be some balance there, you know. Who makes these rules? What's really happening out on the water? What should the regulations be? Should dolphin be 20 fish per boat so nobody gets carried away? Maybe bump it up to a 22-inch size? Would that 2-inch increase even make a difference? And you may be surprised to find out it probably wouldn't in any way because those fish are already spawning at 20 inches. So you're not saving anything, so to speak. But I think a number, maybe a new limit should be imposed. But, you know, how do you feel about it? And again, that's the only way that we're going to be able to really express ourselves and understand, not understand, but help understand how all of these rules come together and what we can do as a recreational angling community to, I'm going to say, lean the odds in our favor. Look, I'm not asking for anything unfair. I think a lot of the fisheries are unbalanced and there's room for renegotiation. Red snapper being one of them, deep, you know, tile fish and snowy groupers. You know, there's so many fisheries here that I think need a lot of help, and we need you. I want to hear from you. You know, everybody's different, right? Where you fish, what boat you're fishing in, but fisheries regulations, that affects all of us, no question. It affects all of us. So let's get together, and I'll be that voice for you. This is a big event that, you know, working with NOAA. We've got a big symposium in November for 5 days, okay, to really dig deep into this with a lot of different organizations getting together. And there's some modifications to some of the existing regulations that are in the works that you need to be aware of, and that I even need to be more aware of. So we're going to work together at this, and we're going to share everything that we learn along the way. But I need to hear from you, you know, as to what you feel is important, you know, for the fisheries and how fair or unfair. And I don't want to use that word. This isn't child's play. It's not a game. It's not about what's fair. Life isn't fair, okay? No one ever said it was going to be fair. If it was fair, we wouldn't all experience tremendous losses through our time here on Earth. It happens to all of us, right? It's not fair. However, it's got to work. It has to be balanced, and it has to make sense. And that's what I'm saying, that a lot of the rules just don't make sense to me in any way whatsoever. 2 blackfin tunas? 2? What are you saying? I mean, who came up with this? You know, again, just another example. So I'm anxious to get more involved and to share all of this with our community here. Make sure to continue to follow us here on Instagram, of course, YouTube, our streaming site, Florida Sport Fishing TV Plus at fsftv.com if you're not already a member. I want to remind you, great membership benefits, 10% off on Chaos rods, 10% off on boat rentals and accommodations here in the Keys through Captain Pips, free line or braid on any reels purchased. You know, we can help you with a lot of different things. Discounts on express deck on your boat, and what a game changer that is, okay? And finally, I want to mention that Captain Mike Genoun's Offshore Fishing Academy and our all-new angling retreat are getting closer and closer to completion. We're making huge headway, starting to work on the exterior and landscaping and really finishing up some interior stuff. So we're not quite there yet, but we're absolutely getting there. And I'm super excited to share more of that with our entire community. This is going to be a one-of-a-kind type of educational experience. This isn't typical charters or joyrides or your typical angling vacation. That's not what this is about. Certainly you're going to relax and unwind and have an incredible experience. But you're going to learn, okay? And you're going to take something away from it here and really be able to dial in your tactics in a way that you've never had before. Between our full-blown rigging station, all of the amenities, hands-on instructional courses on sword fishing, deep dropping, wreck fishing, wahoo fishing, kite fishing, reef and wreck fishing, okay? How about Sea Hunter boat deliveries, one-on-one Furuno marine electronics training, all sorts of good stuff in the pipeline. So keep your eyes and ears peeled for more information on Captain Mike Genoun's Offshore Fishing Academy. Certainly, in the coming weeks and coming months, we'll reveal even more information on this awesome place here in Marathon in the Florida Keys. Look, further down the island chain, Key West, fishing remains excellent on the reefs and wrecks off of Key West, of course, adjacent to the world-famous dry Tortugas that never disappoints. I like to say a bad trip to the dry Tortugas is still a good trip no matter what. And a good trip to the Tortugas is epic. And it's the same for areas even further offshore like Pulley Ridge, right? Great time to head, way off with a group of buddies. We've got nice weather patterns, and the fishing is fantastic with a variety of species out there as well. It's a bucket list type of fishery. If you've never done Pulley Ridge, you need to get out there and experience it for yourself, between the trolling and the deep dropping and, fishing at night up on the edge and the jig fishing. I mean, it just goes on and on. The opportunities, really exciting, and certainly something that you have to experience on your own. So look, we've got great stretch of weather. We've got a lot of opportunity out there, from the reef to the wrecks to the dolphin to sword fishing, okay? Don't forget to focus even on some of those off species, vermilion snappers, porgies. There's some African pompano around, bonitas until your arms will fall off. Great time to load up on bonitas, okay? Remember what I said earlier, bait too? It's a great time to even just go out there and catch bait, okay? It's something that you'll use throughout the upcoming season, So look, appreciate you. Looking forward already to next week. Get out there. I'll see you on the water.